Don't be mad. Don't even be a little bit mad. I hope you can hear those birds chirping outside. They are rainbow lorikeets and some other species I've yet to identify. Galahs, a lot of galahs. You might be wondering, Flex, we had a weekly upload schedule and then you disappeared. And that would lead me to tell you that I've been going through 45 alchemical processes a day. I told you about my Scorpio North Node. This evolution reminds me of what it felt like to quit working in PR when I was 21 and decide to be a full-time DJ. And at the time, I thought it was the most nonsensical behavior ever. To the point where it was my own brother who was like, you need to quit that day job and go and be amazing over there. And then I thought to myself, well, if my sensible brother is telling me I should do this non-sensible thing, then maybe he has a point. And however many years later, I am making what feels like the same transition, doing what I feel consciously is so wild, but in a deep, almost subliminal way, it feels like it makes sense. In a lot of metaphysical, esoteric practices, they talk about life being a cycle and a spiral. And you can be spiraling upwards or spiraling downwards depending on how you perceive your situation to be. And I am spiraling presently upwards, it seems. But in order to take this step into my new life, I have to wrap up my old life. So I've closed how many of my businesses? 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And you can't just close a business. There's a winding down process that has to happen. You have to invest more time, more money, more energy, more emotions to ensure that you are wrapping up in a healthy and legal way. So that's been a lot. And it feels as though I'm having to use all of my resources to do the thing I don't want to do right now. And this is not the thing I don't want to do right now, by the way. This is the thing I want to do right now. So where was I? Closing off my old life. Have I done that in its entirety? No, I'm working on it. Today is an Aquarius new moon in the Pluto Aquarius cycle. So it feels right. It feels very scary. And I feel very anxious about the things on my to-do list. But this episode is a taste of what's to come with no deep dives. As much as I'd love to speak into the void forever and ever and ever, and share all of my best secrets and wisdom and nuggets of truth here for fun, I have to be way more mindful about how I use my resources when creating this podcast. Weekly episodes is not sustainable. And you might say, Lex, just go sign to a podcast agency to do X, Y, and Z. Babes, I've worked in media for 12 years. If ever you see me sign on to a corporation or sign off to a corporation, just know there were plenty of zeros to make it worth it. If the zeros aren't zeroing, nobody's having my IP. Thank you. If you want more of me more frequently, then you can sign up to my Patreon. If you want more of me more frequently, you can sign up to my Patreon. It's a lot of what we do right here, but less theory, more practical. That's when you hear the stories that preceded the wisdom that I'm sharing. It's also where I teach astrology, esotericism, metaphysics. It's where I be hot and sexy with other hot and sexy. It's where I be hot, sexy, and smart with other hot, sexy, and smart people. Thank you. Back to the point. I have enjoyed speaking to the void, but I really, really enjoy having conversations with friends and acquaintances and mutuals and people that I'm a fan of and thinking to myself, this should have been a podcast. As wise as I may be, as wise as I may seem, I know a lot of really amazing, wise people, and I feel like you should know them too. One of these amazing, wise people is Esther, Esther's Universe. I definitely think it's difficult to do people justice when you try and read out all of their job descriptions and titles, but Esther is a visionary thinker, and I want you to be connected with more visionary thinkers. You can find Esther on Instagram, Esther's_universe, and also Esther has an app to support people on their own awakening journey. There's meditations and micro courses. It's called the Theta app. You can get it anywhere you get good apps. And also, you know what to do. Rate this episode 5 stars and 5 stars only. Will I be putting in these cute transitions? No, but I want to play you the singing bowl.
Totally.
I wanted to ask, what do you mean when you say Kundalini awakening? Because I am big on words mean things, not that they have a universal meaning, but understanding what it means to you helps myself and anybody else who's listening put context around your approach and your belief systems and your values.
Totally. Well, for me, so I was on this sort of path where I was allowing myself to just unravel as a human. I was letting everything I thought about who I am just sort of fall away because I was on a healing journey. I wasn't really specifically spiritual or anything at the time. I was quite ignorant to that entire world, really. I just knew I had to change everything and I couldn't keep living the way that I was living. And I was like, okay, I'm going to understand my subconscious beliefs. I'm going to understand why I keep tripping myself up and change everything. And so I was doing that. And then all of a sudden, after about a year of doing that sort of stuff, I went and saw a energy healer. She was like a psychic and does acupuncture and stuff because a friend was going to see her. And I was like, I don't know, I had been to therapy and everything, but I was like, I need something. I didn't know what it was, but my intuition was just like, I need someone to help me with something and I don't know what it is. And I went and saw this chick and she did a few sessions on me and she was doing like Reiki and acupuncture and channeling some things. And she just kept saying things like, it was really, your higher self is really trying to slam into your body. And I was like, okay, like, don't know what that means, but okay. She's like, just
thank you.
Yeah. She's like, keep incorporating this and keep like trying to integrate this. And I was like, I don't know what any of this means, but I'm going to just keep, I took her advice on. After like the third session with her, I came home and I was just minding my own business, sitting. I literally sat down in my bed in front of my mirror and I looked up and I saw this light coming out of the top of my head. And I like moved my head side to side because I was like, that must just be from the ceiling, like my bedroom light. I was like, surely it's just reflecting weirdly. But the light followed me as I was moving and I was like, okay, it's official, like I'm losing my mind. And then I just heard this really loud, intuitive, literally just the word meditate. It was like meditate, so loud. And I was like, okay. And so I sat on my bed, crossed my legs,
Wait,
shut
so
my eyes.
you weren't scared? You were... Because you're saying you weren't spiritual or anything. So I imagine this happening to you. Like, what made you so open-minded?
Well, the thing that made me really open-minded about this happening and me not freaking out was that this session the last session that I'd had with that psychic, she said a bunch of stuff that had already done the freaking out. She was like, you're a master guide, you're up in, the ether and you don't usually have lives on earth and you've come down into this life to do a lot of work to help the planet. And she was like, you have just been boxing yourself this entire time and you're about to break out of it. It's going to be huge and you need to help so many people, blah, blah, blah. She was like, you're a galactic being, you're all this stuff. She just, obviously this is like her framework, her language for this energy and whatever. But that, I was like, okay, either this person is completely insane or it's true. I was like, I don't know.
It makes two of you.
Yeah. So... But when she was saying it, I was like, one part of me was freaking out, just being like, this is ridiculous. And another part of me was like, that's right. Like, I knew I came here for something. Like, this whole time I've had this feeling.
I do know that feeling, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wait, so like pause for a second. So at this time, somebody has introduced you. You said it was a friend?
Yeah.
A friend had introduced you to this person who's a psychic energy healer and one more thing? Psychic energy healer. Acupuncturist. Which of those bits did you understand? Did you know what you were going in for? Or was it just like, I'm open to healing as a concept and I'm happy to hear?
I was open.
What soundtrack?
I was very open. I understood the acupuncture part. I was like, cool, she's going to stick some needles in me. And there's enough, in my head, I was like, okay, there's enough science backing acupuncture. And I had just an intuitive understanding of energy, even though I didn't really understand Reiki or anything at the time. I understood enough about energy to feel at least like, okay, like at the very least, this chick's going to help me regulate my nervous system or something like that. In my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going in for this kind of situation. And I was already starting to open up about, I've got a friend who is pretty spiritual, so she talks about her intuition all the time and everything. And I was already sort of like becoming more open about that sort of stuff. So I just went in with an open heart. I was like, I'll just allow whatever to be and I'll try not to judge it. And yeah, I'm glad. But yeah, I had that remembering feeling. And then I went home and then this voice in my head just screamed meditate. And I was like, all right. And so I sat on my bed. Just started breathing. And then the most wild experience of my entire life just happened. Like I sat there for 2 hours and it felt like 10 minutes went by. And it felt like I saw the entire universe. I saw multiple dimensions of myself. I saw all of my, like, these beautiful abilities. It was like my energy being self, like the source, the universe was teaching me just by showing me, like, you'll understand things now. You'll just have a knowing and it will be like this. And then boom, I just knew information and I was like, what? And it was this situation where it felt like this electricity was running through my body. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning and was just emanating the energy. My heart felt like I could feel it physically radiating outside of my body with my hands. I could feel energy in the air as if I was touching glass. I felt my brain just like buzzing the entire time. And I already knew a lot about brainwaves at the time. So I was like, oh my God, I'm in a gamma brainwave state right now. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I would be lighting up a freaking EEG machine. I wish I had like a scan thing on me. So yeah, and that was just wild. And all of this stuff was happening where it just felt like I was simultaneously exploding with love and exploding with understanding of life and just compassion for all of myself, all of my existence, all of the rest of the world and everyone in it. And I had this moment where I felt this presence of like an energy being or something off in the distance. And I just remember being like, it felt neutral or good. It didn't feel bad. And I heard this voice again saying, send a message to Esther so she can anchor this to reality. And I remember me as well. This was all me, right? But my human me was like, that's a good idea because I'm not going to believe this. And then...
yeah, lock in. I know her.
So then this chick that I'd met earlier that day had my number while I was in the meditation. And I didn't know this until afterwards, but while I was in the meditation, she had this really strong compulsion to pull a card and send it to me. And the card was saying something about like, awakening and all this stuff. And so once I'd come out of the kundalini experience, I felt like I was like kind of floating back like into my human existence. And I opened my eyes and saw myself in the mirror and I freaked out and like slammed back into that space. I was like, holy fuck. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Are we not the adults of the new world? It's us. We decide what's appropriate.
So yeah, I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, what the hell was that? And then I heard the voice again saying like, that's okay. Like, this is just your human body. It's all good. And I was like, oh, and I relaxed. And I was like, what a strange, like, I've never thought that before. I've never seen myself in the mirror freaked out and then had to be like, okay, it's all good. This is your human body. And it felt like I was just like a new awareness in this physical form. So then I opened my eyes again. Then I saw my phone and saw the message from that chick. And I saw like that she'd sent it half an hour earlier. And I just burst into tears because I was like, fuck, this was real. Like this actually happened. And then since then, my whole life changed. Like I started the podcast. I have just everything I do is about sharing this energy because I feel like something happened to me on an energetic level. And now I can just energetically help other people either through my voice or through like physically being near them. And everything changed. Like I am just this open channel. Things just come through. I don't know.
What do you think is like, what surprises you the most about how you've changed? So not in a way that anybody else can validate, but for you in your own body, in your own mind, what makes you feel like, whoa, I'm different now?
I used to be really anxious. I used to have really bad anxiety and I was just like a hustle queen. I was always working so hard. And
it's a girl boss pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, literally. It's like you crash at the end of it and then you have to like correct course. So yeah, I feel like I have this internal peaceful state now where, yeah, I still experience anxiety for sure, but I have this constant light of awareness behind everything now. So instead of believing the anxiety that I'm in and thinking that, the world's going to end or whatever, not literally, but you know what I mean? Like when you're anxious, it just feels like you can't find a way out of it. So even in things like painful emotions and feelings in my body, I am always the observer. So I don't get lost in it and I can transmute that energy really quickly and come out the other side of it a lot faster than I did before. And I think that's probably my favorite part of how much I've changed because obviously I can regulate really quickly now and I am just zooming through life because I'm not held back by myself.
It's a weird thing to know that you lived in that body or that state of mind forever though. Because it's like, yeah, that was real also. and real and valid and felt quite normal. I don't think that I would be able to find the words to explain how strange everything was to me. But I mean, it's just a projection, right? As strange as I felt in the world, it was mirrored by how strange my life actually was. It was mirrored by how strange people would treat me. It was mirrored by this like collective strangeness that was pedestaled by me and others. So like, don't worry about the strangeness, just accept the positive elements of the strangeness.
Yeah.
Because if you bring light to the strangeness, people say it's not strange anyway. It's kind of like, the best way I can describe it to myself and anybody who feels like they identify with me is like microaggressions. To someone who hasn't experienced a microaggression, you're like, they were just being polite. When they said they didn't know how you were so articulate and smart, they weren't meaning that they were expecting people who look like you to be dumb. I don't know where you get that idea from. And you'd be like, oh, no, because why would that be surprising to them? No, you're getting caught up in the semantics. What they're saying is that you're smart. I'm saying they didn't say that. They didn't say that. So now we're fighting over semantics, but what I'm saying is you're not acknowledging what happened. And it's weird because I wasn't acknowledging what was happening either. So shout out to life for showing me that. That was really helpful. And energy is a weird one because I think it's like, well, the limitation with the English language is that as well as we all speak it, this shit makes no sense. Because energy, there's scientific energy, there's biological energy, there's spiritual and metaphysical energy, there's philosophical energy, and then there's like an everyday understanding of like my personal energy, which is maybe like my stamina, my motivation, my vitality, or feeling the opposite of down. It's like if I don't feel down or stunted or stagnant, then I must have energy, as opposed to recognizing that everything is energy. It's not a cliche, it's just a fact. And so when you have to start unpacking, I always say you find the keys to life through cliches, because you're like, why is everybody saying that? Why is everybody saying that? What does it all mean? Or even like environmental energy, like everybody knows the vibe. Oh, the vibe in the room was weird. What are you talking about? Let's break that down. How are you so mindful of everything in between the objects, which is my favorite thing at the moment, the space in between? I feel like the material world, we've kind of maxed out on our understanding based on our own personal preference. Like you can know more and know more and know more. But I feel like we're at an age where ignorance is acceptable in many forms, so you don't really have to know more to have a great time. But when you start trying to look at the space between the stuff, so you take out all the stuff and what's left, you have like wind, and then you have like vibes, and then you have tension, and then you have feelings, and you're like, wait, where does that come from? At first, I thought all those things were just a response to the objects in the environment. Oh, I feel the tension because obviously the room is stuffy, and it's like, yeah, but what is the tension then? No, it's because like she gave me a weird look. Keep going. Why would a look resonate as a physical sensation, babe? So it got to the point where I had to start asking myself these questions and not just accepting that I understood what they meant or how they felt. It's like, ask again. Do you really understand it? It's like, no, I don't actually. And I now I understand it more in a body sense, which I didn't even have that terminology 6 months ago. I was like, everything, understanding comes from the head, and it comes from inside the head, which is the brain or the mind, and maybe it comes from behind the eyes. I could gather that, but realistically chopping off the head and only using the body, I was like, I don't know what that is. And now I do know what that is. It's this sensitivity that I was like, if this was always there, then what was the stronger force or the stronger element that numbed out that sensitivity?
I think it's like our thoughts, right? Like
anxiety. You think thoughts can numb out? How can this little brain numb out a whole body?
Our human mind, like our ability to conceptualize and everything and understand and seek knowledge and want to grow and all of this, I think like it's it's such a blessing and a curse, because like in one way we are so primitive still. Like I don't know why I feel this way, because all we know is the max of what we know so far, but it feels like if I was to zoom out from the perspective of the universe, like humans are so primitive yet also so incredibly powerful and wise all at the same time. It's like we're simultaneously both.
Sweet spot.
Yeah, we could be one or the other if we just got out of our own way. And so it feels like we're only so primitive because the very nature of our existence is that we can use our minds to be, they're so powerful, such a powerful tool, but we instead kind of trip ourselves up with them and block this amazing communication device we have, which is our bodies. Like you were saying, it's like this amazing sensitivity situation. We can read so much, we hold so much energy in our bodies. We are energy, we're made of energy. This is one of our strongest ways of feeling and communicating, and we get so caught up in the top part, like in our head, in the little cloud of our, mind, and instead of allowing it to all sort of funnel through and be like this infinite, continuous communication device between body and mind, our analytical mind seems to be too strong of a filter, and it like blocks out that communication, and then we get too caught in our heads and we think, and we're thinking about, limiting things rather than expansive things, and we're just tripping over ourselves as a species again and again, but we're also trying to ascend so much, and it blows my mind. The more I think about it, the more I think I don't know anything,
For sure. But one thing that I've been thinking about recently is that for however long we can all agree civilization has existed, there's been this dissonance in the way people communicate what's happening here. And maybe that dissonance comes cross culture, cross gender, cross race, cross whatever. But from the beginning of time, we can't seem to agree on what's actually happening. And for me, it felt like I just have to start choosing what makes sense for you and then live with that. Because having to hold the information of what you could believe, what a skeptic would say, what an uninformed but well-meaning parental figure would say, what a best friend would say, what an ex-best friend would say, what a sibling would say. It's like, I don't even think they would know. So now I'm holding all the possibilities, all the options, creating this dense anxiety, feeling fundamentally violent for not wanting to honor someone else's reality as I deny my own. So I'm like, look, you do what works for you. One of us is happy, but you do what works for you. Because I swear, like, I felt for a little while that I knew exactly what made sense to me. And then having to justify it or rationalize it, often not to well-meaning people, to people who were trying to convince me that my own experience was a fluke in some capacity, and that they had this wisdom born from not having my experience, but being professional skeptics and critics, could tell me more about myself. And I'm like, well, even if we just put the CV down, what can you tell me more about what I've experienced? But it's this certainty that I'm like, wait, I'm not offended by your certainty. I'm offended that if you berated me enough, I might believe you. Which is a crazy thing to reflect on, because so many of the people that I used to surround myself with were so, what's the word? Not sobering, not grounding. They were very negative, but they thought they were being realistic. And I think a lot of people who skew negatively or pessimistically have this superiority complex about how that's the most realistic way to be. So knowing and saying my whole life that I live in a fantasy land, I knew there was some kind of thing we were agreeing on. What I experience doesn't feel common or normal to anybody but me. So I can understand that we both agree that we're not living in the same reality. However, my instinct isn't to find more information to suit the theory that there's distance between us. I'm trying to find information that'll suit the theory that we're closer than ever. So I'm in high school doing personality tests, being like, see, like we all have our own unique personalities. Yeah. And we all have something special about each other. And look. There's this thing called archetypes, and it doesn't matter who you are, but it just means that sometimes you can like come across a bit like a character, and like, what's your archetype and what's my archetype, and maybe we have the same archetype, and you see how similar we are. And that desperation to be like, wait, like, why don't you want to see what I see? No, that's just silly. Grow up. Okay, I grew up. I grew up and now I'm fighting bitches. Don't chat to me funny. Oh gosh.
God. Fully though.
It's
Hey.
just so strange. It's very strange. And I also think it's a byproduct of, having to live life in multiple perspectives. I think the average human perspective is like me from my perspective, me from my experience, and then maybe my family's experience, my community's experience, my culture's experience, and that's it. But this social media alternate reality simulacra kind of looks like reality, but it's not really. And then having to have everybody tell you about yourself in a way they feel justified to do so is very interesting, because you recognize how you're also doing it as well. Like, I'm telling the world how the world is from my perspective. Whereas the main difference is, before I was trying or attempting some kind of balance or harmony that was in spite of myself. And now flipping the switch and trying to create balance and harmony for myself, and recognizing that it is kind of ostracizing to other people. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know what that means. I don't have tools to help you out there. Cause like, it's so weird to be like, yeah, I don't have words this time. I spent my whole life gathering the words and finding the references, and here's the article, and here's the book, and here's the video, and this is why it's real. And so much of my experience is firsthand now. So if you haven't also experienced it, then I can't bridge that gap.
Yes, fully. It's like something that when I'm like, if I'm listening to your podcast or your videos, the way, I don't know if you use the words specifically, but the way that you communicate, it's very obvious to me anyway, that you're coming from, like, you're cognizant of the fact that your experience is your experience. And when you're sharing your views on things, it's like the vibe that you give across is like, we're co-learning this together, and like, take what you will from this, here's how I perceive it or whatever, which is really cool. And I think that's really empowering. And it's something that I always try and do as well when I'm talking to people, is like reminding people that, like, this is the way that I view it, and constantly encouraging others to find their own experience. And like, yes, we can take knowledge, but we can also drown in it, and we can lose ourselves in it. So we need to bring what we are experiencing. And yes, knowledge can absolutely help us expand, but I think there is a certain point where it gets a bit muffled, and you need to come into the body and be like, what do I know? What is my personal experience? How do I feel? How do I view the world? Like, what's my embodied understanding? And then it does help to share our understanding with others, because it can help, their little puzzle pieces click into place for them. But yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand that, like, you can only take so much from someone else's experience, and you have to go inward on your own journey and learn what everything means to you, because really all we have, everything that we experience is our own. Like, all we have is our own, we can feel someone else's energy, but what we're feeling is our perception of their energy. Like, we can understand someone else's knowledge, but we're only really understanding our perception of what they've been through or whatever. So it's like, finding what means something to us is like the most important thing.
It's definitely finding a sense of personal sovereignty for yourself, which, when I used to say it 5 years ago, the only way it was coming out is bitchy. I'm like, it gets to a point where you need to be your own authority. You need to develop some kind of autonomy. You need to be the one who's governing, controlling, ruling yourself. And there's like a tricky way. I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this, and I don't think I've got it quite right. But this tendency to want to outsource the most important parts of your being to other people, your belief systems, your value systems, your belief about crime and punishment, your political alignment, looking for the people around you and saying, have you got the words? Because I'm waiting. They're on my back. They're on my neck. So you get the words. And you kind of can see this in corporate culture as well, how you learn the professional way to pass responsibility onto the next person. And you forget that you can collaborate, you can co-create, or you can develop a sense of, I want to say sense of self, because that's the bit that I've been observing on this side of the fence for 10, 12 years. Like, I think that people think that the experience the consumer and creator are having on social media are the same. And to me, that's very naive, because you're like, there's a different language that's being spoken, there's a different intention, and there's a different benefit of what each of us are doing. a lot of people think they're taking risks by even hearing somebody else's point of view or hearing a contrasting opinion. You know, like, oh, make sure people don't see that your algorithm could possibly have any information that would let them think that you don't, da 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 da. But it's like, imagine being the person who has to live their own experience, then find a way to narrate it in a way that honors them, but is also accessible and relatable and understandable. And then you come here with a level of critique, but no solutions, no courage, no bravery to do the same. And so before, I thought the thing that I was asking for people or stressing was like, have a bit of personal responsibility, have a bit of authenticity, but it's sovereignty. You are the supreme authority of your life. And even in some instances where and especially people listening to this podcast right now, we are the same type of person. You have sovereignty. And so I think and it's the same thing that I was thinking about, right? Like, what is the value of leaving your own reality to validate somebody else's, aside from the illusion of being in an alliance? You respect me, I respect you, you're my responsibility, I'm your responsibility, let's not do anything crazy. But that's not what ends up happening, because when you don't practice emotional or mental or even physical sovereignty, then you end up being unduly influenced and controlled by others' opinions or their expectations or their energies. And it's fun to be influenced when you're choosing your influences, when you're like, I like that author, I like that way of thinking. Like, for me, I'm into Taoism right now. I'm like, this makes sense to me. It's just mirroring my belief systems, so I like it. I like the resonance of that. And I think there's this weird thing that happens, and I don't know if it's social media or it just exacerbates it, where the general consensus is that if you really believe in what you believe in, that you're ignorant.
If you really in what you believe in, then you're ignorant.
Then you're ignorant, because you mustn't know enough. And there's so much to know that if you believe anything, then you must be a fucking dummy. And it's like, well, this is all we have. I don't know, like, what else are we going to do? I just don't understand what other options do we have. Similarly, I was talking to a friend, and I was like, I can't help but make my belief systems my personality. That dissonance I was only doing to kind of preempt or anticipate some kind of conflict. So if I could just like bring 45% of myself and then leave room for everybody else, then that would be good. But what it meant was that I would walk into environments or situations and subjugate myself to the most irritable person in the room. Because it's always that person who's controlling shit, you know?
Yeah.
And it gets boring, like so boring and so tiring. And like, it's not working, and it's not undetectable either. Like, the way that I can feel people pander to me, they can probably feel me putting a wall up between us and then doing the fucking PR speak and like, yeah, if you think that we have different beliefs and it's so crazy. But if we go back to energy, what do you regard it to be in your own experience?
Oh my God, that's probably the biggest question anyone's ever asked me.
Aww.
What do I regard energy to be in my own experience? Oh my God, okay, so like there's so many angles to that. It feels endless. It feels like on a large scale, like it feels like I live in a snow globe or something. It feels like
wow.
It feels like there's not a lot of difference between, it doesn't feel like there's any difference. Sometimes I'll just be touching a tree and I can see the energy through the tree. I can see that it feels like I could literally just fall into the tree and just morph with it. And it feels like I can still feel air, you know what I mean? Like air feels like water. And everyone that I'm around, I see a reflection of me in them and them in me, the kind of thing. Like if someone says something that's, a bit pointed or mean or whatever, I no longer feel like, oh, that person's being mean to me. Like, sure, I still feel the feeling and sometimes I'm like, ouch. But at the end of the day, like the main feeling underneath that is like, oh, this person's hurting because X, Y, Z, and my light has like triggered this thing in them, and this is an awesome opportunity for them to see it. And I'll try and shine light in that area if I can, if I feel like the person's open to it. So it's like on a level of like the world that I live in, the people I interact with, nature around me, it feels like it's all this continuous fluid situation, and it all just blends one into the other. So that's one way that I experience energy and like being alive on Earth. And then on a quote unquote individual sense, in my physical body, I let's just say I have like a big wave of emotion, like the kind of things that people feel when you're dealing with like maybe money stress or love, like if you're in a situation where you're like, oh my God, I like this person, or, you know, those big ones that you can get really like huge emotional feelings in your body about. I used to feel those feelings as just like all-encompassing emotion that I couldn't see past, and I'd just be like, oh my God, it's so heavy, or I would try and avoid feeling it and, you know, distract myself, go out with friends, go have a drink, whatever. Now, the way that I experience it is I'll feel this massive load of energy in my body. My mind will say like, oh my God, I'm feeling this way. Maybe I'm anxious. And then it's like that light of awareness part of my consciousness is like, okay, well, why are you anxious? And all of a sudden it seems like I can almost like see this massive load of energy in, maybe let's just say it's like the shape of a dragon or something like that, just to give it a visual to try and like help communicate this. But there's this like huge dragon of energy sitting in my body, and the dragon is not good or bad. The dragon's not about to kill me. It's not about to, you know, make me super happy. It just is. It's just this huge dragon load of energy, and it's sitting right there in my torso, somewhere between my throat and my pelvis area, and it's massive, and it doesn't really know where to go, right? And so it's like my brain is just going, oh my God, there's this huge dragon of energy. What do I do with it? I'm freaking out. I don't know how to hold it. And it feels hard, and I feel tired and heavy, and I'm like resisting it. And I'm like, I don't want to feel it. It's uncomfortable. But then I go, oh wait, it's just a dragon. Like, it's not actually bad. I'm not going to die. And all I have to do is set it free. And so then I take this massive dragon of energy and I say, what if you helped me, instead of like draining me and being, you know, heavy feeling, what if you were fuel? What if we used that amazing flame in your breath to create something amazing? What if something incredible came from this huge load of energy? And so then I sit there with it, and I'll be meditating or something and just breathing, and it's like I flip the script of it in my head, and I inspire myself in that moment. And what I'm doing is I'm using the power of my mind to shift the identification of the energy in my body, which then shifts the frequency of the energy in my body, right? So it's like when it felt like anxiety, it would be a slower, like it would have like a dissonance in the frequency. It'd be almost like uncoordinated energy, kind of like spazzing out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. And then when I identify the energy as something that's going to be fueling me and powerful, it goes into coherence, and it feels like it's harmonizing, and my mind and my body and my energy are all suddenly going in the same direction. And then I feel excited. I feel empowered. I'm like, actually, I'm okay. I'm just a consciousness experiencing life. I'm allowed to feel these emotions. I'm allowed to feel sick about this thing. I'm allowed to be worried about this. It doesn't actually mean that any of it's true or real. And at the end of the day, in my present moment, it's not happening right now, but what is happening right now is I've got this huge load of energy in my body, and guess what I want to do with that energy? I'm going to create something with it. I'm going to record a podcast. I'm going to do a painting. I'm going to build my app out. I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like, we can take, right?
Chills. Yeah. That's
so
beautiful.
To me, that's transmutation.
Yes. Thank you for describing it in a way that makes a lot of sense to you, because I'm right here with the dragons. I got two tatted on me. I feel really strong with the dragons. I'm like, yes, it's exactly that. It's the dragon. Right?
Yeah.
I used to fully think that energy was just like me in the world. Like it was only outside of me. Like, you know, when you leave the house and it's a very humid day and you're like, whoa, I'm in a sauna. That's how I perceived energy. Like I'm walking through the world, it interacts with me, and then I respond to it, good, bad, neutral, or whatever. And so when I thought I was building a proficiency for energy, I think I was just build kind of like a catalog of different ways the outside world was making me feel, and having this umbrella of what I consider to be energy. So sometimes you walk into a room and you feel really excited and you squeal with the girlies. And sometimes you walk into a room and you feel like, why is everybody looking at me like that? All of that I could really regard as energy. So when I was talking about energy, it was that. What's my experience in the world? Me as simply the person who's watching, because it's very easy for me to disassociate with my body, in the sense that up until recently, I never used my body as any kind of information system. I'm like, I don't really know what's going on there.
This is
like,
so new.
this is somewhat this is what doctors do. You go to the doctor and then they tell you what's happening with your body. That's not my business. I'm in the mind, I'm in the brain. And so it was constantly that, like, clogging up my mind space with these updated ideas about the world around me and how I felt about it, not realizing that I was creating kind of a key or a system to alert me, like, yes, this is how you feel about the world. This is how you perceive the world to be responding to you. Why is that? And I didn't really understand what that was, because I think it comes from, like, the way people pathologize stuff. So, you know, like, oh, you know, if you're aware of just stuff happening, you must be highly sensitive. And it's like, or everybody, myself included, is just numb and finding different ways to deal with that numbness of trying to connect ideas. Because even when you numb out yourself, you're not immune to experiencing the world around you. And so it's that dissonance of being like, no, I don't need to feel more. The world needs to change.
So true.
Because of astrology, but also astrology and yoga / Hindu philosophy really helped me to understand what I now can consciously appreciate is energy. And the way that I view it is not a concept, but a resource. It might be intangible the way money is now. What the heck is binary code? It's not even the gold standard anymore, but intangible in the way that, like, I can't necessarily pick it, but I can hold it. And so I also always feel like my energy is something I can carry in my body, like a vessel like this big, like a 1 liter bottle. Maybe it's bigger, actually. It's bigger, but for explanation's sake. I keep this, same way you keep your dragon inside you, I keep this vessel inside me, and it carries stuff. I feel like the way that I feel, it carries, like, my will. It carries my ability to want to go and do stuff and change and transform and see and learn. All that comes from this thing that I'm carrying. But I didn't realize, because I was able to, as I say, work through my reserves and not use my energy to conjure up thoughts, just use my brain space, that I didn't need extra energy, right? And so I always think, okay, if energy is a resource and I can use it and I can replenish, where am I getting the energy from? Like, where does it come from? We all know, like, energy can't be created nor destroyed, but look, where is it coming from? And so doing yoga and doing pranayama breath work, feeling in your body when you are cultivating energy, when they say shit feels electric, they weren't even joking. This is not a metaphor, a euphemism. It's not it's not a simple way to say something. You literally feel stuff in your body moving, little vibrating, tingling cells moving all the way up and down. And if you're really tapped in, you can move the little tingling, vibrating cells to different spots in your body. Now we're playing games. The moment I was like, we need to stop this class. We need to stop this class. There's
everybody
something
else feeling this?
and you got, like, that's, and so when I was like, it's not just in a vessel. It's a good way to explain it, but it's coursing throughout your whole body. And the reason you can walk into spaces and feel energy is because you can only really feel, well, it's like, it's what you know experiencing with what you know. They're communicating, they're talking. Your body is the conduit, your body is the messenger. So when you walk into a space and you assess, I feel comfortable here, that was that energy talking to your energy saying it's safe to come in. How do you feel about that? But in addition to that, I think that it's been really helpful to view energy as something tangible that I can use, because it reminds me that it needs replenishment. And also, it makes you think about what does it cost to be you? I'm not talking like your bank statement. I'm not talking like, how much money do you want to live? Like, what is the cost energetically for you to think how you think and talk how you talk and dress how you dress and believe what you believe and go where you go?
Everyone needs to journal that question and then answer it for themselves. I'm actually going to do it when I get off the phone. I feel like intuitively I have this good barometer of, like, what it costs to be me. But when you said that, I was like, fuck. Go on.
I'm talking the whole thing, every area of life. What does it cost to be a good mom, a good partner, a good friend? What does it cost? And are you in debt? This whole, like, you can't catch up on sleep. Yeah, but energy is the same. It's a resource that needs to be accounted for. And if you're not using your energy, what are you using?
Yeah.
Something's going.
Right? Like, without our energy, we don't have anything. Like, people can die from burnout. You can have a full-on nervous system shutdown, and, like, it's valuing your energy, to me, is the ultimate act of self-love, because all we are is energy. All we have is energy. So when we prioritize our energy above everything else, above people pleasing, above societal expectations of what you're meant to be doing, above anyone else's thoughts about you, if you prioritize your own energy, it's kind of like when you're on an airplane and they say to put the mask on yourself before you put it on the children. It's like, don't be a fucking martyr. Like, look after your own energy before everything else, because then the ripple-on effect of that is that you can have a really positive impact on your own life and on the world around you, energetically and physically. Without our energy, what are we doing?
Exactly. And I do encourage everyone to think about what your vessel looks like. What is the thing that's holding the thing that you use up to be able to do stuff in the world? Like, I remember back when I was going through like mass breakups, like snip, 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 prune, prune, prune. Everyone's got to go. Leave me alone. I'm starting fresh. I don't care if I'm doing it alone. I don't care if I've got no one for the rest of my life. I cannot have real life succubuses attached to every part of my body every day for the rest of my life. But when I was doing some visualizations around what I thought that feeling was, because although I'm a verbal thinker, so I think in dialogue a lot of the time.
Same.
Yeah. There's something to it. I'm still workshopping it. I'm still workshopping.
I don't understand it yet. Go on.
But that means I can create really strong kind of like verbal cues around, like, I've got very metaphorical language, and that can help me kind of visualize what it is. So there was 2 occasions. One, a therapist I went to, well, I thought he was a therapist, he was a psychiatrist. And I was like, whoa, King, I'm not here for any medicine. Okay. I'm just here to talk about that one panic attack I had. But I remember he had asked me to describe myself. He's like, how do you see yourself generally? Let's say you are a house. And I was like, oh, easy. And I didn't know that we were doing the therapy yet. I'm like, oh, Kiki. So I'm like, okay, amazing. I feel like I'm this really pretty like castle, but this like one person type castle. So it's not really big, but it's really kind of like tall, and it's like on the top of a hill, and the hill is so lush. It's like lush, fertile ground, and surrounding the castle is like a moat, but you can't see the moat because the moat is surrounded by other flowers. And from the perspective of the bottom of the hill, the door is on the back side of the castle. So if you're at the bottom of the hill, you are under the impression you just like look, you can't really go into the castle. But if you make the journey upwards and you go around, you see there's like a full door and a gate. He was like, are you okay? And I was like, huh? I'm talking about architecture. What are you talking about? So that was the first one where it's like, okay, so your sense of self is strong, but you fundamentally believe that you are to be isolated or misunderstood, or however deep you want to go. Whatever you think is probably correct for the state I was in, my mental state. And then I was thinking about this pruning season, and I was like, you know what it feels like? It feels like I have this huge, like, beautiful fountain, kind of like, let's just say it's like a beautiful chalice, but like super size, max, the size of a huge fire pit for a bonfire. And at heaps of points in my life, people have been heaps thirsty, and I've been like, I've got so much beverage, babe. Here, let me pour you a cup. Here, let me pour you a cup. And then they tell their friends, and their friends are like, oh, can I come have a sip? I'm like, yes, come have a sip. A sip, like, come. And so I'm pouring out cups. Now there's a bit of a line happening. And I'm like, I did not come on this earth to be pouring cups of liquid. So how about everybody get a really long straw, and you sort yourselves out. You drink when you want to, and you be merry. And so even that visualization, it's like that cup, that saucer, sis, that's your energy. That's how you perceive it. I've got a lot to give. And when I say to people, like, I'm always on reserves, it's not that I'm able to do stuff without energy. It's just I have a big capacity for holding heaps of energy. I love leisure. I love pleasure. And so I'm constantly doing things that replenish. But the way that I see it, how I've been known to replenish is like the fast food version, not low GI. It's not fiber rich. You know what I mean? It's not lasting, not keeping me fuller for longer. And so I imagine everyone drinking from my cup is also really like, I gotta get more. That's the good stuff. And so then I'm looking around, everyone drinking. I'm like, why are you all acting like banshees? Like, where's the decorum? I was pouring cups for you. Now you're like suckling at this straw and never taking it out of your mouth. That's insane. But this visualization, or this verbal visualization, really helped me understand, like, this is not a watering hole. This is not a community fountain. Like, this is my energy. If I have some to give, which I often always do, look at my life, then you can have it. There will always be some for you to take. But the way that I was giving you the impression that you had access to my water, my energy, that was my bad. So let me remove myself. Access denied. Cut the straw, cut the straw, cut the straw, cut the straw. Everyone's like, no, I'm so thirsty. I'm so thirsty. I'm like, my hands are tied. I'm so mean. But visualization really helps. And honestly, when people say like, you've got to give from the overflow, they're not saying that, because the way people have this really people have a scarcity complex when it comes to their own resources. So when someone says you must give from the overflow, they're like, I've never been flowed up my entire life. Yeah. If I'm waiting to give from the overflow, then I'll never give it all.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, that's the problem. Yeah. And the newest realization that I come to recently is, and I'm just going to use the language that makes sense to me and that I'm sure makes sense to Esther as well, and you can read between the lines. A lot of us have been taught to get our energy from other people, whether it's through affirmation, validation, recognition, or on the opposite end of the spectrum through tension, fighting, breaking up to make up, having an inferiority complex, a superiority complex, a innate fear of other people, an innate trust, whatever it is. We get our energy from the way we relate to the world and the people in it. And I think when you start recognizing you can get your energy from source, from an actual regenerative source, then you realize it's almost like you rethink your relationship to the other. Like, what is my role when there's nothing I actually need from them? And everybody around me is people that I want to be around. Or better yet, it's like you're not measuring it by what can I get, or what are you offering, or what is there. It's just like, I'm in my own body responding to the world, and you happen to be here, so now I'm responding to you. You are now in the world that I am also in. Why would I not acknowledge you? But you recognize when people solely get their energy from other people, that will be the relationship you also have with them. And if you think about like other people, when I say when you get your energy from other people, it reminds me of this conversation I had with a friend I had like 10 years ago. And she was maybe like 5 years, 10, closer to 10 years older than me. So like in different life stages. I remember her saying to me, she was like really sad over like a guy, whatever. But I couldn't understand why she was so sad. And she was like, when you get to my age, you'll realize that when your partner is having a really bad day, it ruins your day as well. And there's nothing you can do about it. That is what I mean by getting your energy from somebody else. Does that equation make sense to you? Did you come to this earth with your partner ready to go, signing a contract talking about, we're going to be unduly, whatever? You don't. So that is the thing. And in astrology, I explain it as like, whenever you think about energy, you have to think about alchemy and you have to think about contracts. We sign contracts with our time, our money, our energy, our resources, the way we speak, our body language, where we go, why we go there, how long we stay there. You're signing contract. But the payment terms are always in the currency of energy. You agree to do stuff. And if you think about the way of the world, or you think about the way of your own brain or your body, it's constantly looking for homeostasis, constantly finding what is the pattern, how can we put it on a repeat. So when your friend hits you up and says, hey, do you have 20 minutes to go through the list of things in my shopping cart because I really want to buy a new dress for this occasion, and you think that is so dumb, but you say, oh my God, babe, of course, then you sign a contract, not to fearmonger, but what have you agreed to do? That when somebody who you care about asks you to do something that you don't believe is important, you'll disregard your own beliefs for theirs, because you believe that whatever their simple request is reigns more supreme than your feeling towards that request. It's not to say there's not a middle ground where you say, hey, I'm not going to do the whole cart, but like when you whittle it down to your top 3, show me, I'd love to see. I'd love to help you out. You know what I mean? So when you think about the contracts you sign with your energy, if energy cannot be created or destroyed, if that contract is signed, then unless you terminate the contract, you set a precedent. And when you set precedents, you end up feeling like, oh gosh, I don't have energy, I don't have this to do what I want, and then I'm tied up and this and that. It's like, yes, you're tied up. But also the alchemy is exactly what Esther was saying with the dragon explanation. It's like when you feel something in your body and you run with Murphy's Law, the simplest answer is the best answer. No, that's if something bad can happen, it will happen. Occam's razor, the simplest answer is the best answer. Then you never give yourself a chance to rewrite the programming, to say, okay, like maybe initially I liked the feeling of butterflies. Now I know it's anxiety. I don't want it anymore. And unless you view your energy as something that you yourself can not control, but create pathways for, then the energy will do what it's always done.
Yes. It'll like repeat based on like your sort of autonomic functioning as well, and the way that you are used to feeling things.
It's so crazy.
I was learning so much from you just then when you were talking about back to like the waterfall thing and the drinking the straws and everything. And like now, like that you've obviously done a lot of like recalling your energy back home, and you're, by the sounds of it, able to maintain your own constant homeostasis, your own version of energy, even in the face of like the world reacting in its own way, or the people around you reacting in their own way to energy or whatever. It sounds like you can hold your own and be grounded in
That's what
yourself
we're learning.
So like where are you at now with what's the visual metaphor or whatever for where you're at now with people wanting your energy, maybe more in like the sense of like your social media and your very like outward self rather than your inner circles? Like how do you navigate that? Like how do you navigate being seen and wanted by so many people? And because you have a lot of energy, and honestly being on the other end of receiving your energy, it's beautiful. Like when you put something out, it feels energizing just to listen to your voice. Like whatever's happening in the frequency of your vocal cords that's coming out of your mouth and floating through space and into my ears is amazing. It's like it's very energizing, which I think is a really healing thing. And I think like what you were saying, a lot of people don't know how to get energy from themselves. So it's like, yes, I can listen to your voice and I can be energized by you, but also I can go outside and get energized by nature or just my own way of transmuting energy and stuff like that. And so then obviously there's a lot of people in the world who are only getting the energy from the people around them, like you said. So what's that feel like on your, like, I don't know, like I don't know what it's like to be you, and I don't know what it's like to be seen and experienced by that many people. I don't, like, what's that like, and where are you at with that now? Like, what can I learn right now?
Yeah, the main thing with social media for me is like recognizing which part of it is my dharma, which part of it is my duty, and which part of it is my insecurity, my guilt, fear, shame, wounding around feeling like this, like, it's not imposter syndrome, because I've always felt special and been confused why people didn't think I was special, but it's more like as you said, I'm working on what's my stuff and what's your stuff, and social media gives you the impression you're creating community and it's all our stuff. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did, but I don't know what it was.
Confirmation beep.
Confirmation beep. Universe is like, meet.
Thank you. So yeah, what's my stuff and what's their stuff, and social media gives you the false sense of community, like it's all of our stuff, when realistically you become the receptacle for a lot of other people's stuff. Hey, you're talking about relationships, I want you to talk about friendships of people in uni. I'm not in uni. That's the simple answer. And before, I would have the habit of holding people's stuff and developing complex storylines as to why it was my duty and my dharma to deal with them as individuals, as opposed to remembering, what are you here to do on this platform? Learn stuff and share it. Learn stuff and share it. And that duty gets confused as the algorithm changes, as the functions change. You know, we didn't have stories back in my day. It was just feed posts. We didn't have podcasts. We didn't have this. We didn't have that. And so as I evolve, I have to keep remembering that social media isn't an extension of my full self. It's a tool. And when I don't use it as a tool, shit gets real confusing for me, because now suddenly I feel as though what's mine is yours, but what's yours isn't mine. And then I get to this real like self-sacrificial place where I'm like, okay, this person needs me. And the thing that I'm always talking about is like, I think there are 3 tiers to like my internet presence. It's what everybody can see, which is like the branding stuff, the stuff that pays the bills. It's the things that I want to say, and it's the conversations I'm actually having. And the conversations I'm actually having, like if you were following me for the 100 stories a day, 5-year period, then you would know that the DMs were crazy, and every DM was a huge conversation and giving advice and what would you do and da-da-da-da-da. And that was me getting energy from other people, but it was like that fast food type of energy. And so when people weren't interacting the way that I wanted them to, quote unquote, then I would feel like the energy isn't good enough. I'm not getting what I need from this exchange. And so it goes back to like, are you prioritizing what you're here to do, why you're using this tool, or are you getting caught up in the energy transfer of being something for someone? It's like the gurification. That's like the real crux of like the social media influencer public figure shit, is that everybody becomes a guru. And gurus have way different responsibilities. It's not about necessarily the work that you're doing. And I don't mean gurus in like the traditional sense. I mean like the gurufication, right? Pick a person, make them your untrue, wait till they have something to say, and then just listen. And that's different to a reciprocal relationship where it's like, I say something, you say something back. I say something, you say something back. But that has no bearing on the duty. And if it takes precedent over the duty, then I've gone too far. And this is why, and when I say duty, the way that I want you to think about it, I think I've talked about it before, but in reading the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu or Vedic philosophy text, it starts with this story of this guy called Arjuna and Krishna, like Lord Krishna. Think of Krishna like a god figure, like an omnipotent person who knows heaps of stuff. And Arjuna's freaking out because he's a prince, he's a royal, and the two royal families are beefing so hard they're going to go to war, like real, like swords, weapons, fighting to the death type shit. And Arjuna's fucking freaking out. He's like, I thought they were like, there was tension, but now they're really like getting excited for it. Like they're really going to commit to this. And Krishna's like, I don't know what the problem is. Arjuna's like, what do you mean you know what the problem is? Like, I can't kill my family. This is crazy shit. And Krishna's like, okay, I'm a bit confused because you said you're a prince and a royal, correct? And I was just like, yeah, correct. And it's like, okay, so when your whole life been a prince and a royal, benefiting of being a prince and a royal, right? Now the princes and the royals are fighting and you're opting out. You don't want to do it anymore. Why? Is only the good stuff your duty, or have you been naive as to what you're actually doing here? And I reference that in social media because it really distracts you from your duty. You think you're doing the thing you're meant to be doing, and then suddenly you're kind of like, oh, I've just been like mood boarding for people my whole life. And it's like, what do you need to share? What is bubbling in you so desperately and deeply that you've been like swimming upstream to tell people for 10 years? Get to the point. It's not I read a book. It's not I watched a podcast. What are you trying to tell people? Tell them that. And so when I do just that, it gets so much easier to be like, hey, thanks for telling me that. Hope you have a good day. And I think it's weird for me to, like, when I describe taking my energy back, because I'm already quite like a words affirmation type bitch, I'm still in the fray. I'm just adjusting like what parts of myself I'm using to do that. So nowadays, the compliments and the criticism, it hits the same. I'm like, there's only a select few people that I really, respect is not the right word, but that really, like, chosen mirrors, people who I'm like, there you are so inspirational to me, so aspirational. I didn't want to be like you. I just like that you're doing you.
Yes.
Thank you for that reminder. I'm going to go do me. And so when I get into these like micro conversations where someone's like, hey, I'm asking something of you, but also not willing to give anything, then I'm like, hey, you keep it. Like I had this conversation, there was this person who every time they'd respond to my story, maybe it's like 80% of the time, it would be like, I hate that. Talking to something like, I hate Teslas, I hate that artwork, I hate this. And at one point I was like, you don't have to tell me what you hate.
Yeah.
But then they respond and they say, well, you have a platform and you're known to be socially aware. I just thought you wanted to know. Wanted to know what? What information do you have? Tell me the information. Don't make me a vessel and a receptacle for the unresolved emotions that you won't hold for yourself. You don't need to tell me that. But I would have never have said that. What I would have said is, lol, ha ha ha.
Classic.
Sickening. Was there anything you want to say before we head off? Anything on your spirit?
So profound. No, like, thank you for shining so bright. Like, I think that's the main thing, right? Like, for me anyway, like wanting to, like when I say like I want to help the world, the thing that really, like when you were like, what's inside you bubbling up, blah, blah, blah. The thing that's really there is that I truly just feel on such a deep level that people who are able to authentically be themselves is medicine enough for the whole planet. Like,
wow.
You, right? Like you shining and being you could talk about fucking anything, and just because you're vibrating at the resonance of authenticity, it's such a permission slip to do the same. It's like a ripple-on effect. It's like you've dropped a fucking giant rock into a pond and you've rippled out and you've hit so many people along the way and inspired so many people to be authentic as well, which is it's so healing. And because when you can be really authentically yourself, you have a compassion for yourself, right? Like you're having unconditional love for the way that you are. That's why you can be authentic, that you can take the good and the bad or whatever you want to
Fully.
call it and accept all of it. And so when you're that compassionate for yourself and that authentic, then you are just inherently that compassionate for everyone else. And that is, one, such an energizing way to be, and two, it energizes other people. And I just think it's amazing. So I love what you're doing, and I think it's very inspiring.
Thank you, and likewise. This is the actual hard work. We've talked about it before. Like, this is the real brave stuff. This is the real courageous stuff. Not like, oh, I was really nervous because like I did a red carpet interview and like, shh, shh.
I had to tackle my inner self.
Babes, I had to grapple myself, pointing fingers at my third eye, being like, what the fuck are you doing? And like, I don't really know. Me all burnt out, half a person being like, huh? Wake up! Wait. I just, like, I'm so tired. Always so tired. But it's like, no, you're depleted. The language matters. Like, not everything is yours to hold. Some things happen to you. Either way, it's your responsibility. And I feel really excited to make different choices, get different outcomes. Because when you've made heaps of choices, especially in a way where the choices you've made can be validated by you, but people around you, you're kind of like, I can make a new choice. I've been making choices my whole life. Like, that's not the hard bit. The hard bit is like knowing what choice you want to make. Like, when you can do everything, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And like, for a long time, the answer was like, nothing? Liar.
Yeah, there's stuff in there. You just got to get past yourself and see it.
We will have another conversation about resonance and frequency because I think that frequency, the idea can feel a bit binary to some people. Like you're either like vibing high or you're vibing low and there's nothing in between. But resonance as a concept, like feeling congruence, feeling like what you think matches what you say and what you say matches what you feel and what you feel matches what you do, and developing that resonance, because it's really easy to feel incongruent in the body and be like, okay, a few things that are out of whack or good, I'll just keep it pushing. And you can keep pushing for quite a long while, but I think it'd be easy. Maybe it would be. I think it'd be interesting to break down, okay, what is the crucial steps to creating resonance, especially in environments that you can't control. Because I used to be such a control freak in my own way. Be like, if I can control myself, the environment, using the tools that I have, then everything will be right. And control is not resonance. Flow is resonance. Improv is resonance.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that.
We will get there.
Improv, totally.
Improv.
Oh my God, thanks for the chat. This was so fun.
Thank you. Isn't it fun to remember you can just like talk to the girlies? I always forget. This is why we have mirrors and reminders. I feel so deeply about it. Like, I didn't have to remember that I could chat with the girlies. It just would happen. And then I feel energized. I'm like, we got to do it again. We got to do it again. And we're learning so much. And especially being on social media, I think that, especially being people who create content and publish it on social media, you would think what we're doing is like documentary of some sort, but it's not really. Like, when you look back at the things you've posted, you don't always get a really deep insight into what you were feeling or what you believed or how your belief system evolved. And I want to start documenting in a way that is accurate to now, not always in reflection or in anticipation of the future, but like, what did we think right now in this moment? Let this be a real archive, not doing the work in private, coming back and being like, okay, so the last year of my life, I've been pruning. Sis, what are you talking about?
Fully. That's how I feel like I need to create some kind of harmony between my podcast and my social media, because on my podcast, it's very real time. It's like, I just went through this, like, this is how I'm feeling right now. Here's how I'm transmuting it, blah, blah, blah. You're fucking on the ups and downs with me. But then on my TikTok, and now I'm starting to like do more on Instagram, but on my TikTok especially, it's like I take the wisdom that I developed over the last 6 months from those lessons, and then I put that out there. But yeah,
it's smart because like so TikTok and Instagram are like, they really go everywhere to everyone. And knowing that, I feel like limits the message, where you're like, I don't know, I know that this could land funny. At least when I'm going into a space that's been curated with a specific intention to have these conversations, they'll come through. And I also feel like with TikTok being banned or going to be banned in America, and then the under 16 social media ban in Australia, the mobile phone ban for people in detention centres in Australia, like we're going to get to a point where people are really going to be highly monitoring, as they already do, these traditional social media platforms. They're not monitoring a podcast in the same way. They say, you guys talk too much. We can't really get to the point. And we're like, thank you. We're like, having a podcast is like the real secret space. Because there's just so many, and it's hiding behind layers of like understanding. It's like, you got to find the podcast, find the episode, resonate with it, listen to it the whole way through. We're safe here.
Exactly. Yapping is going to actually save the world.
Honestly. Yapping, and also doing our own research and documenting that research. I feel like that's the next stage. Now we're in that stage of being like, it's not just our own experience. Sorry, it's not just other people's experiences that we believe to be valuable, it's our own experiences. But now it's like, okay, if we want the rest of the world to see what we see, it's a bit naive to not show them in the way that they can understand. It's not like, hey, listen to 45 podcast episodes and maybe then you'll get it. It's like, how do we distill what we know into things that can be picked up and put down effortlessly? Don't punish people for wanting to know more. Help them in a way that doesn't take too much, not too much, in a way that doesn't take everything from you. In the fountain,